Got a job for you, 621. I have beaten Armored Core 6, and outside of going for the Platinum, which I think I'll definitely do at some point, I feel completely satisfied from what Armored Core 6 brought to the table. However, I'm also left wanting more, in the best possible sense. AC6 really reignited a passion for me with that style of game, and especially the customization that Armored Core 6 brought to the table, and I really want to play more of it. So let's talk about the future of Armored Core as a franchise, and in my opinion, the 4 main paths that it may go down in the near future. Because when you read some interviews from FromSoft, the game did pretty well. And I'm glad that FromSoft, at least from my understanding, are realistic. It was never going to sell as well as Elden Ring, but it didn't have to. Having these other smaller-esque games is important to have because it lets you test different ideas and mechanics and different gameplay styles and flows. You can do different types of fights in Armored Core that you can't do in a game like Elden Ring, for instance. And I think from top to bottom, Armored Core 6 is overall jam-packed with imagination and inspiration. So what are the 4 main paths that I think Armored Core as a franchise may walk from here? Personally, I'm not expecting anything for 2024, because I think 2024 will be Elden Ring DLC's year to shine. I think something may get announced, though. Now, what are those 4 things? Well, 1, obviously, Armored Core 6 DLC. It is possible. I do agree that it is entirely possible that you can create this separate, smaller entity to give just the players a bit of a bite-sized chunk of new content. Realistically, how long would that be? Maybe a chapter, maybe 2 if we're lucky, of content. I don't anticipate it being like another 5 chapters or so. 3 on the extreme, maybe. But giving us some new missions with even some new weapons. I'd love to see some more coal-based weaponry and see what you can really do with that. Since we only have a few in the game, really lean into that idea. Because it's DLC, who cares, just have fun with it. Go completely balls to the wall wacky with it as well. Maybe for campaign missions, give me the ability to dual-wield melee weapons. It's a bit of a balancing nightmare for PvP, but in just the single player, I mean, dual zimmies and dual Gatling guns already exist on top of the stun needle, so who cares, right? Just let us go all out. And it's stuff like that that I think a DLC for Armored Core 6 could really shine. Give us a couple new boss fights just to play around with. Maybe have the DLC take place in a new biome just to vary up the visual experience. There's a lot you can do with a DLC, and I think if you're going to go in the direction of DLC, more of the same is probably for the best. I don't think the Armored Core 6 formula should be altered all that significantly for DLC. Just expand on what was there, add on to it, and lean into those strengths and those elements. More armor sets, more weapons, more level design, more mission variety, stuff like that, you know? I think that's where an Armored Core 6 DLC could really shine. Now, the next step in the direction they could go is looking back to the series before this. Possibly doing remasters or just straight-up ports of the old Armored Core games. Whether it's Armored Core 1, 2, Last Raven, 3, whatever. Those games had absolute cult followings, and while they're not exactly like the new modern Armored Core 6, those games have strengths all uniquely to themselves. And while I never really partook in the single player for those games, I loved playing 1v1s against my cousin back in the day, customizing our Armored Cores and just battling against each other in the various maps. It was super fun. And especially considering that at least the legal methods of playing those older Armored Core games are kind of difficult and complicated nowadays. Because if you don't have those older consoles, you're just kind of SOL. Doing some kind of collection that lets the players play where this series came from could be a really cool idea. And I'd be personally in favor of something along those lines. Now that's the second path that I think Armored Core can go from here. The third one is looking at that past, taking one of those experiences, like 2 or Last Raven or whatever, and saying, okay, let's remake this in the style of Armored Core 6. I think this could be the least likely option, or if it does happen, it'll be along the lines of, say, like a Demon's Souls remake, where it's largely a graphical overhaul with a few twists and changes here and there, which I do think could generate a decent amount of hype by itself. I just wonder how likely this option would be. in lieu of saying just remastering or porting the old games, or just going for the fourth path that I'm talking about, Armored Core 7. I think there's a legit argument to be made that FromSoft shouldn't focus on making a DLC for Armored Core 6, and they should just focus in on Armored Core 7. Possibly continue the storyline from Armored Core 6, expand on the formula, and just deliver a wholly new packaged game, with new features, new maps, a new story, whatever. I think, honestly, that may be even my preferred path that they walk down. Because my biggest fear when it comes to, say, an Armored Core 6 DLC is that likely it would be a 2025 release and it would just be kind of short. Probably a few hours at most. And it would just leave me wanting even more and potentially delaying the release of an Armored Core 7 that would almost certainly happen at some point in the future. And delaying that and kicking it down the road a bit further than maybe it could have come out. And I'm not saying that these conversions or this math is correct or anything, but I'm just thinking, would I prefer having like a couple of hours of Armored Core 6 DLC in like 2 years' time? Or would I prefer having Armored Core 7 in like 3 or 4 years' time? Like maybe they can do both. Like maybe they can have separate teams working on each. Or they do what they did for the Demon's Souls remake and get someone else to do something before Armored Core 7. Maybe they can do that. But I think the priority for me is to just focus in on Armored Core 7. Take what worked in Armored Core 6, which was a lot, lean into that, strengthen those strengths, and change up the few flaws that I think exist, which is some weapon balancing, some multiplayer optimization, maybe a little bit more aesthetic diversity in the main story, and taking what came already and just making it even better. Pretty much all the ideas that I had for the DLC, but just cranked up to 11 here. Even more weapons, even more customization, even more extravagant body parts and stuff like that to really customize our AC. Maybe adding even more missions into the New Game Plus and New Game Plus Plus experience. You know, stuff like that. I think what I would want out of an Armored Core 6 DLC would just be done better with an Armored Core 7 if that became the priority. Instead of coming out with a DLC that would probably just leave me wanting more, and honestly probably a little bit unsatisfied due to its length, well, possible length, I'd honestly just prefer them to focus in on Armored Core 7. And maybe they do that and they have somebody else focus in on, say, like, Armored Core 2 Remastered, or Remake, or whatever. At this point, I just wanted more Armored Core. And I'll be honest, I wouldn't be necessarily opposed to any of these potentialities as to where the series can go from here. I just have my preferences, and your preferences may differ. So comment down below with what you would want. Would you like to see a full-blown modern-day remake of one of the older Armored Core games, or would you like to see remasters or just straight-up ports of the older Armored Core games as they were? Would you like to see them focus in on Armored Core 6 DLC? Or would you prefer them to just say, okay, all hands on deck, Armored Core 7. I think Armored Core 6 is now a proven formula. It was successful, it was fun, it was engaging, and it showed that the mecha genre and Armored Core can still exist, and not just exist, but thrive in the modern day. So now that that's a proven concept, lean into it, extrapolate on it, go even further with Armored Core 7. You can tell a new story from the ground up, or extrapolate and expand on where Armored Core 6 left off. I'm fine with either possibility, because I know that either way they cut it, it's FromSoft. They are a proven commodity. It's almost certainly going to be good. They have earned the benefit of the doubt, at least in my opinion. So just overall, I'm extremely optimistic and positive about where Armored Core can go in the future. A franchise that I once thought was dead and buried has come back to life in the most glorious of ways. And now I'm just here salivating and metaphorically hyperventilating as to the potentiality of this franchise, the potential, the sheer wonderment of where this series can go from here. The fact that it's not dead, that it's not forgotten. Armored Core 6 brought Armored Core and mecha games overall, in my opinion, back. And I'm so glad that it did. Right now, Armored Core 6 is the front runner for me for Game of the Year. I love the game to death. It's one of those games that in the few years' time, or even probably in a year, I'll probably revisit and just play it all over again. Not for progression or anything, just to experience it all over again. A gripping narrative, a wonderful world, great characters, fun, and bodacious. Yeah, I'm bringing that word back, by the way, gameplay. And I just want to see more of that. And with that, I think I'll call the video there for the day. Thank you all for tuning in. My pleasure for making the video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and help support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for 5,000 subscribers. Thank you all from the bottom of my heart. And if you want to join in on the race to 10,000, then hit that subscribe button down below. I got a job for you, 621. Dang it, I should have made that the intro of this video. Okay, so if I actually edited that to be the beginning, you'll know why. Sometimes my best ideas come like minutes after I do a thing. So with that, I'll call the video there for the day. Thank you all for tuning in. My pleasure for making the video. If you enjoyed it, please stick around for some more. Hit the bell icon to be notified when I upload and stream in the future. Follow me on Twitch down below at twitch.tv/JMullsG. Stay safe and have a great day. I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Until we meet again.